Welcome, Dr. Song, to the Bougie Mom podcast. We are literally so excited to have you here. Your newest book is fantastic, fabulous. It should be literally in every parent's household. Everyone needs to read it. Grandparents need to read it. I'm not even kidding. It is revolutionary.
I so appreciate that. That was my intention. I'm like, please let this help kids everywhere.
Yes. And so I'm spreading the word. I'm telling all my coworkers, I'm like, you need to read this book. And if you don't have time to read it, you can listen to it on Spotify. I'm like your official spokesperson. So we cannot wait to update all of our listeners on why this book is so important. And we're going to give you the 411 today with Dr. Song.
Hey mama, it is Celia from Bougie Mom Friends. If you are trying to find balance being an amazing mom while still trying to find time for you, you are in the right place. My co-host Cami and I are here to talk about all of the things from trusting your instinct with your kids to carving out space for self-care and even indulging in a little pop culture escape. It's all about real conversations with moms who get it because we're all about thriving, not just surviving. So take a breath, grab a drink, and join us, your Bougie Mom Friends. I'm like terrified to know that like children's lifespans are going to be shorter than ours. Because I feel like back in the day, right? Like obviously there was a lot of illness and there wasn't modern medicine, but now we have modern medicine, but everything in our environment's so toxic. Like, what is your estimation for lifespans for like the new generations to come? That's so scary.
Yeah. I mean, it really is scary. So there is an article that was published in 2005, and that's the one that you're referring to, that in the New England Journal of Medicine, where they noted that, as you said, our lifespans really over the centuries, have been over the past 1,000 years, have been increasing. Modern technology, the discovery of different medications and different medical interventions. And it was really in the early 2000s where researchers noted that for the first time ever, instead of having longer lifespans, our kids were expected to have shorter lifespans than their parents, despite, as you said, all of these medical advances. I mean, we should be in this golden age of,
right.
Wow, we have all of these tools, all of these technologies, all of these medications. And yet now we're at the place where we have to biohack our way through life now. And we don't want that for our kids. We want our kids to not just have long lifespans, but also what people are calling health spans, because it's not enough to live long lives. I mean, what we're finding now is more and more kids are having chronic health concerns that range anywhere from maybe a little eczema patch here and there to like a full-blown autoimmune disease or severe anxiety. We know that mental health problems have skyrocketed in our kids. And we know now that, or we should know that mental health is not disconnected from our body or our gut microbiome, right? It's all connected. These are all signs that something is not right with what our children are facing, and their immune systems and their brains and their hormones, they're all shouting out that they need help.
So let me ask you this. When, as a pediatrician, did you realize that the gut was the kind of the holy mecca to a lot of these ailments you were seeing within your patients?
Yeah. It was, that's such an interesting question, because I do remember at a certain point, it was very early on in my training where I went to this conference. It was a food as medicine conference. I was fresh out of residency. I was kind of this shiny, hopeful, young pediatrician thinking, okay, I'm going to do good for the world. And I had been disillusioned and kind of disheartened with what I was seeing anyway during residency and medical school, but I stuck with it. And then I went to this food as medicine conference where for the first time, I heard a very young Dr. Mark Hyman, talking all about this thing called functional medicine. And I'm like, what is that, right? What is functional medicine? And wow, food has the power to actually reverse and prevent all of these chronic illnesses that just seem like it was an inevitable, course of life for many kids and many adults. And so that was right after residency. I'm going to date myself. That was back in 2000. And my mind was totally blown. I'm like, okay, at that point, I'd actually kind of question, second guess whether I really wanted to stay in pediatrics. I thought, maybe I'll take my children's health knowledge and do more advocacy and lobby on Capitol Hill. I actually was going to be a lawyer and, just kind of change routes, still work for children, but in a different way. But then when I heard about functional medicine, I thought, okay, this could make a difference. Like this could really change how our kids' health really, really progresses. And so I started my practice as a functional integrative pediatrician back in 2004. But even then, in functional medicine, we always say, point to Hippocrates saying all disease starts in the gut. But even then, you keep learning and learning and learning. I feel like this explosion of knowledge and awareness about the microbiome has really been in the past maybe 5 years, where it's just now. I mean, even people who aren't familiar with functional medicine, they've heard of probiotics. Right?
Yeah.
You can't go to the store and not see fermented foods like, oh, what's this kombucha? Okay, maybe I'll try some. And so, I mean, all for the good. I love that. And now we really have to have that trickle down to our kids.
Like as a new mom, I feel like I have like good education, kind of well-rounded. I'm 50% Chinese. So I've come from a culture where, you eat a lot of different type of foods. And after having a kid, we had met with moms across America, and it kind of opened up my eyes to realize how much toxins are in our food.
Yeah.
And I ended up throwing out basically all of my pantry.
She did.
I know. Yeah.
And that was terrifying. And I look at like my parents' generation and I look at the millennials, and I'm seeing so many millennials with breast cancer, so many millennials with like colon cancer. And it's just so outrageous. But I think the hardest thing for moms is reading the label and understanding what you're purchasing, because now you're like, okay, let's shop organic, let's shop gluten-free. And I feel like it's really tough because marketing plays tricks on your mind. And now they're finding even these healthy foods have lead, etc., carcinogens, like all of these things that are sometimes even more toxic than like the Kellogg brand or, our General Mills, etc., like those big major food corps. How do we navigate that as moms?
Yeah. I think, the first thing, so, I mean, kind of like you, when you realize how toxic our food can be, our skincare products, our cleaning products. I mean, the first instinct is, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of everything in my house. Right. And then, and I went through this too, where you're almost, you almost become afraid of what you're eating or what you're touching, or you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is safe or not. And so we have to come to a place where, I mean, it's a balance. We are in a world where we can't go back to a time where we're in a toxin-free world. Plus, nobody wants that, really. I mean, do you really want a time? I mean, maybe some parents, right? But really, in our modern world, there are a lot of conveniences that we're used to. And yet we have to recognize that these conveniences come at a trade-off. We also have to recognize that our body has these beautiful systems in place that are meant to keep us healthy, right? We have detoxification systems. We have, our immune system is meant to get sick and then recover and get better. Yet, if we are filled with lots of toxins, it's harder to do that. So it's more about what the balance is, right? It really and truly is about, okay, let's eat clean and live clean most of the time. And then when we go on vacation or when things are out of our hands, when we go to grandma's house and it's just not exactly the food that we might, want for our kids, that's okay. That is okay, right? We can, and the beautiful thing about your microbiome, I mean, your child's microbiome and our microbiomes really do hold that key for wellness, the gut-brain connection, the gut-immune system connection. And our microbiomes, they want to bounce back to the state that they were in before whatever hit. Like, let's say the frosted blue neon cupcake at the birthday party, right? If you laid those foundations of a healthy gut microbiome, your child's gut microbiome will easily bounce back, and their immune system can bounce back, their brains can bounce back. And let's say you just are realizing now and they're, 4 or 5 or maybe 8 and they have some health concerns and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, that all these foods were going to wreck my microbiome, my kid's microbiome. I didn't know to, restore their microbiome after antibiotics or different medications. It's still okay. We can't go back and undo the past, but we have to recognize your microbiome. If we nurture it, food has such power to restore and get your microbiome healthy. So that's really the message is, we live in our modern world. Yes, we can do what we can to reduce our toxic burden. And yet we're still going to have some level of toxic burden. We can't completely avoid it. So we want to lay those foundations so that we can be as resilient as possible.
I think that's really reassuring and beautiful. And I appreciate you saying that, because as I, become more into like the mom gang, right? And I'm talking to all these women, there's so much stress and mom guilt and pressure that I feel like we're always feeling guilty and we are second guessing ourselves. So it's nice to know that our bodies are built to fight, and we can have those bad days or those periods of time when we're like not on a balanced, per se schedule, but it's not going to like ruin everything for you.
What I do appreciate though in the book is that you tell the truth, like you tell it like it is, and there is a connection with what you eat and what you're feeding your kid will lead, to issues with their gut. And a lot of people like to sugarcoat it and say, oh, it's okay once in a while. And yeah, like you talked about, there's instances where we can't control on vacation and going, to the family's house, but you have to make smarter choices. It's just unfortunately the time that we live in, and if it, will affect your child, but you put it out there in such a way that it doesn't apply. Like I didn't feel mom guilt about it. Like my daughter she had antibiotics for an ear infection, which was 4 months. And I'm like, oh, now I'm starting to.
Well, that was so important to me because as you said, there's so much mom guilt around. And, I think you can't help but feel guilty when you hear certain things and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could go back and undo that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I tell everyone, both of my kids had antibiotics when they were under 5 weeks of age. And I mean, and even as a holistic pediatrician, knowing the, how much disruption it can cause to the microbiome, I still knew, okay, those antibiotics were necessary. So now I was fortunate to know, okay, let's restore and maybe do some probiotics and, other nutrients to really restore their microbiomes. But at the same time, we can't go back and change the past, but we can move forward. And that was really, really important to me as a mom. I mean, because we always think back, oh my gosh, what was that one thing I could have done differently? Or did I make this mistake and it's going to affect them for the rest of their life? No, we can just, that stress of it all can sometimes be more inflammatory than the original insult. So, we just have to, always have this mindset of, okay, no matter where we are right now, we can always move forward and we can always up level our game no matter what's going on.
So what I think that your book does really well is that it explains it from like zero knowledge base. If you have no idea about like toxins in food, you do not know how to read a food label, you walk through step by step what you're looking for. You even give some food examples, like here's a choice, maybe this one's a little bit better, and you list the ingredients. So it's really, really, it literally teaches you step by step, how to walk, the life of cleaner food choices and habits. It's phenomenal.
The basics are important for people to learn because I feel like there's so much out there that you should be doing, but then you just don't know how to do it. So any step by step is helpful. I have a question that, I'm not from the medical space, but as I'm learning, it's just so intriguing to me. I want to learn more. But obviously our food impacts our microbiome, but then that also impacts our vagus nerves. It impacts aggressors inside of children's bodies, etc. How did they figure all of that out? And do you have tips for children that, they aren't necessarily like ADHD, because now they want to diagnose everyone with ADHD and, so on and so forth. But do you have tips on food related to children's behavior?
Yeah. So One of the things that we know, and actually, I just was giving a class to practitioners on an integrative approach to attention and focus issues, because as you said, so many kids nowadays, they're just not comfortable in their bodies. Right. We see so many kids like wiggling and the sensory issues, and they can't sit still, or they can't be calm in their bodies. And sometimes that can manifest as ADHD symptoms, or behavioral quote oppositional symptoms, I mean, whatever you want to call it. But it's so hard for the kids, and it's so hard for the parents. Nowadays teachers have so many kids with these similar challenges that they're overwhelmed too. And if parents and teachers just understood the power of food to really help regulate or not regulate behaviors, we would be serving our kids different school breakfasts and different lunches, and we would be packing different lunches, and our teachers would be thinking differently about, parties at schools, and what is allowed to be served or not served. Right. So, let's take artificial food dyes, those artificial colors. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over the years, and the FDA has still not acknowledged that artificial food dyes can really affect children's attention and behavior, even though in Europe, any food with artificial food dyes or preservatives does have a warning label that food can affect your child's attention and behavior. Right. And it's not necessarily just kids with ADHD. This is across the board. There was one study that found that, nearly 1 in 3 kids who are diagnosed with ADHD could be helped by simply removing artificial food dyes in their diets, right? And another article, I mean, it was really alarming. It showed that kids who are on a steady kind of standard Western American diet, or on a junk food filled diet, could have anywhere from 2 to maybe even 7 times the risk of developing ADHD. On the flip side, when they have interventions of a more Mediterranean type diet, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, seafood, that could reverse their ADHD symptoms. And in fact, in the Netherlands, there was one study that found that, something like, I may be getting this number wrong, but I want to say like 68% of those kids with ADHD who were on this diet intervention for only 5 weeks were able to stop their medications. Wow. I mean, that is astounding. And if parents knew that, if pediatricians were shouting this out, if in dietary school, registered dietitians were taught this, not just the functional medicine docs and the nutrition, holistic nutrition consultants, but really in the conventional medical system. Yep. I mean, we would be in a totally different place with our kids right now. Yeah. And, I do, my kids are, they're older now, they're in 8th grade and freshmen, but we're in a small public charter school where they rely heavily on parent volunteers. And I remember in their younger years, in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, I did a lot of volunteering, and I went on a lot of field trips with them. And it was really heartbreaking to see the number of kids who are literally like rolling on the ground because they just couldn't sit still, or blurting out, or in someone other kid's space and tapping and touching. And more than just what we would expect for a typical 5-year-old. Of course, a 5-year-old's going to do some of that, right? But so overwhelming. And then you have some of these other kids who are really trying to pay attention but unable to. And then on the field trips, and once they get older, the overnights, just the bags of medication that were, carried on the field trips to administer to these kids. So I think that there are parents are becoming more and more aware, but we need to have that trickle up, to the pediatricians, to the conventional pediatric world. I had this one kiddo, when we think about, the quote controversy around artificial food dyes from a top, standpoint. I have this one kiddo who was almost going to be diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. I mean, he was, young, 5, 6, wasn't getting along with any of the kids in the school. Classmates got aggressive, violent kind of outbursts, right? And at home, just they would walk on eggshells around him. Even though he was the littlest in the family, right? The parents and the older sister, they just weren't sure what was going to set him off. And he hated physical touch. Like his mom couldn't hug him. Every time she tried to kiss him, he would just kind of wipe it off, right? I mean, it was heartbreaking. And so when they came to me, and my mom was totally overwhelmed, and I said, well, let's think about some testing we might be able to do, some lab work, blood work, urine, functional medicine testing. We can think about supplements, but as we went through his diet history, it became clear he was eating fairly healthily. But yet the snacks and the candies, especially after soccer, was, the artificial dye Gatorade and Skittles and all the things, right? So I said, let's just make one change. Let's swap out anything with artificial dyes, anything that says like FD&C or Blue Lake or a number to it, right? We just swap it out. And we literally, so it's not enough to say, just swap it out. We found a Skittles alternative. We found hydration drink alternatives that mom could buy, M&M alternatives, because otherwise it's so overwhelming as a parent. Like, I don't know what to get. How do I know what's okay? As you said, right? So, we just made that one step. I didn't even talk about getting in more fruits and vegetables because I was like, okay, that might be
baby steps, right?
Challenge, right? That is a big step for many kids. I mean, less than 2 weeks later, mom sent me a message, and I mean, I get like goosebumps when I think about it still, because she said, not even 2 weeks later of just cutting out the dyes, he was a different kid.
That's crazy.
He was more calm. He was getting along with his friends. He was able to play soccer without being disruptive. And she said the most important thing for her, like for the first time that she could remember in a long time, he didn't wipe off her kiss.
Oh my
and he even asked for a hug. Right?
Isn't that?
I mean, that is like,
so...
I read that and I got tears in my eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, you can't make that up, right? That is not, and it really, it could be potentially as simple as that for some kids.
Yeah.
Right? When you see some of the kids. And so it's the artificial food dyes, and then it's the sugar.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and this is the thing, that I tell parents, even for me as a holistic pediatrician, thinking, as you said, Celia, I'm buying all the healthy food, the whole grain, even the gluten-free, the whatever it is, organic. I wasn't really looking at the sugar content.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I was looking at the ingredients. I was making sure it was a quote clean product. But then when I started looking at the added sugars, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm sending my kids to school already with their vanilla Greek yogurt and whatever else it is, already with way over the amount of sugar they should be having in a day.
It's like 9 grams of added sugar to like literally a yogurt. I'm like, why?
Yeah, why? Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was huge for me. I like to think that I shop pretty well, that we're pretty, air quotes, healthy, but I never really, you put in your book that, any kind of fruit juice is going to be added sugar. And I never really thought about that in a product. And so my daughter loves the little like fruit bars, the organic ones, the Scout organic ones.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And so she will pop like 2 of those. And I was like, babe, I was talking to my husband. I was like, well, how much? I was like, I'm pretty sure it's like added sugar because it's like fruit. And then like in the back, I'm like 11 grams. I was like,
one Scout has 11 grams.
Yes.
I had no idea.
And think how easy it is to have 2, right?
Show you 2. Yes. And I'm like, that's our daily intake of sugar right there. And I was like, oh, mind blowing.
Lincoln has one every morning when he wakes up.
Yep.
Yeah. It's very eye-opening. And then it makes us realize how easy and it makes sense why our kids' palates want sweeter and sweeter things because they're getting so much without us even realizing it. And then we add on the actual quote sugary things, right?
Straight
as
sugar.
your kids get older, it's crazy. The kids who are, I have, very athletic, slim, fit looking middle schoolers and high schoolers. And, they're playing sports and they're working out every day. And yet when I check their blood work, they have all the markers of prediabetes. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what is going on? And then you start asking about their diet history. Well, after practice or after every game, yeah, we go to boba tea. We get, whatever, we get the lower sugar jasmine strawberry boba tea, right? Or, we go to Starbucks and get that mocha mint cappuccino. But if they're doing that every single day or almost every day, it adds up. And so, for kids, I'll do a little, I'll have them do a little, math project too. And I'll say, look, the grams, it doesn't quite equate for them. If we say no more than 25 grams. So I'll let them know, okay, 1 teaspoon of sugar is about a little over 4 grams of added sugar. So just think, let's say that Scout bar, right? It's 11 grams of added sugar. That's about 2.5 teaspoons of white sugar that you literally, your kid could be spooning right there, right? Into their mouth.
Oh my God,
right?
I want to throw up.
And then that boba tea with 35 grams of added sugar, well, that's like 9 teaspoons you just had. It would take a lot longer to sit there and spoon and eat 9 teaspoons of sugar than slurping down that boba tea. I mean, think how fast it goes down, right? And the average teenager today, I mean, take a guess at the average number of teaspoons, not grams, but teaspoons of sugar that the average teen has today.
Please don't tell me 16.
Is it 15?
Well, okay, so we should have no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar, right? The average adult has 19 teaspoons.
Yikes. Oh, man.
The average teenager has 34 teaspoons.
Stop.
But it's like it's hiding in plain sight unless we're aware of it.
Exactly.
And then, we know that kids with behavioral concerns and attention focus concerns, they tend to be even more sensitive to blood sugar swings. So then you have this huge spike in your blood sugar after that frappuccino, and then their blood sugar crashes and they're hangry or shaky or, irritable, and then they need another sugar fix. And then it just goes up and down like that. So I think, if parents really recognized how many teaspoons of sugar were in, whatever foods they're buying for their kids are buying for themselves, we would make different choices.
Yeah.
Right. Parents want to make these choices for their kids, but we just have to understand and know.
Yeah.
And like the other important part of that is also educating, our kids about healthier food choices and added sugar.
When they're away from us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. It's so important. And, of course your teens, I mean, the teenage years and the tween and teen years, it is a time where they are meant to become independent and do their own exploring. And some of that's going to come with some pushback on the things that you've implemented at home, right? So the best way for them to make those decisions when they're out and about on their own is to educate them, is to teach them. And I've had teenagers read parts of the books and, tweens read parts of the book and start really looking at food labels and start talking about, the decisions that like what they want to buy when they're out with their friends instead of, the Takis choosing a different bag of chips. And so, so that's how we're going to make a difference. And I think as moms, we have to stand back, and if they make some decisions that we're not necessarily, really keen on, that's okay. They made that one choice.
Cheese fries and Bosco sticks every once in a while, kids.
That's right.
Let's not do that every day.
And then we just make sure that, what I'd like to do with that is then just have them really pay attention to how their bodies and their brains are responding, because chances are they're going to notice, playing lacrosse that afternoon, I was a little more sluggish. Right. Or, I actually was, I kind of chewed my friend's head off, even though it was like this minor little thing, right? I was just so much more angry, or I couldn't sleep well that next night, or just paying attention to that. So that way they can really make that informed decision the next time they want to have that, whatever that, sugary drink.
Yeah.
If they have an exam the next day, if they have a big tournament the next day or play, they might make a different decision and save that for another time. And so, it's about helping them understand the impact of the decisions they make.
Do you think food is literally why there's so many allergies now with kids? And what I mean by that is when I was in elementary school, there was never a handful of kids with nut allergies. There was never this list of what you couldn't bring into school, which obviously it was like all sugar, but that was like the treat. But now everything is so pulled back. Like, why? Like,
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, because really these we're not just talking about food sensitivities. We're really talking about these anaphylactic food allergies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
These really severe, life-threatening food allergies that really have been, skyrocketing. I think it's now 1 in 12 kids has a food allergy. That's
Yeah.
astonishing.
That's
I mean, when I was
crazy.
in residency, it was
Wasn't like
unheard
that.
of. I mean, it was the rare kid who needed an EpiPen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now, I mean, the allergy forms in schools, and so many kids carrying EpiPens on them and at school. I mean, there's different reasons that people, researchers think this is happening. One of the reasons is really comes down to the microbiome. There is a very important type of bacteria called bifidobacteria. Like if you look at your probiotic supplement bottle, you'll see lactobacillus species and also bifidobacteria species. For babies, that bifidobacteria is so important. So babies normally should have, maybe 80% or more just bifidobacter species. Once you get older, I mean, by the time you're an older toddler or, a kid or an adult, it gets much more varied. There's much more variety. For babies, we don't want a lot of variety. But what we found over the centuries is that babies are losing a lot of their bifidobacteria, and their gut microbiomes are becoming more diverse too early. And that bifidobacteria is very important for building up what's called immune tolerance. Because everything that they encounter, every food, every environmental allergen, everything is new to their immune system. And if we think about it, your gut is your skin, yes, is your largest organ, but your gut is your largest interface with everything that we're eating, right? And everything that we're exposed to. So it's the bifidobacteria in your gut that talks to your immune system and says, oh, that piece of peanut, particle that just came through, we're going to tolerate that. That's okay, right? We're building immune tolerance to it. Oh, that dust mite, that just passed through, allergy, that's okay. We're going to be tolerant to it, right? When we don't have enough bifidobacteria, we don't build that tolerance. So now all of a sudden your baby's immune system starts thinking danger, danger to a lot of these things, right? When really we want to have calm, tolerate most things, and then danger to things like poisons or viruses or bacteria or things that really shouldn't be there. So that's part of it, and that's a big part of it. Now, when it comes to eczema, we also know, eczema is associated with food allergies, and even as our children's microbiomes have changed, we have microbiomes all over us, right? On our skin has its own microbiome. Our gut has its own microbiome. Even our eyeballs have their own microbiome. I mean, we're finding our brain has its own microbiome. It's fascinating.
It's crazy.
But our skin has its own microbiome. And through also the centuries, our skin microbiome has changed. I mean, think about all of the frequent washing, the antibacterial
Chemicals.
soaps, like all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so our skin no longer has the great barrier also that keeps out different things like, food dust particles, right? And so, for babies now, one of the things that some allergists are recommending is just to really keep your baby's skin moisturized with literally a barrier against, like if you're eating a whole bunch of peanuts, then that peanut doesn't get to them through their skin and start sensitizing them. So it can be as simple as, after the bath, you just kind of massage them with some coconut oil, or there are some, great moisturizers for kids now that are in fact, there's one called Yobi that has a probiotic complex in it that I love, that's, you can put all over your baby's scalp and face and body. It's even meant for adults too. But we know, eczema, asthma, allergies, hay fever, those are all, really significantly on the rise. And so we have to do what we can to try to prevent that.